Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in from across the continent for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. Where I live today, I had to go up on my roof and shovel 2 feet of snow to help to get everything all ready and make sure we didn't have any ice damming over the winter. So it's been a crazy wintry day. So I'm so thrilled that, like me, you're joining us as we get to go into the warm tropical waters of the world. We wrapped up earlier today with the amazing folks at Disney Conservation talking about all their work to save sea turtles. That, like all our programs, is on our YouTube channel. And today, for the first time ever, we have got Christina Biggs joining us, and she is going to share some of her epic adventures around the globe in pursuit of the coolest things beneath the waves on planet Earth. So if you're as excited about all that as I am, I hope you guys are ready to buckle up and dive in. Christina, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the broadcast.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for having me, and thanks from wherever you are. I hear there's some of you in Glenview, Illinois, which is where I lived for 20 years, and also hearing it's very cold and snowy there from my kids who still live there. So, but welcome from wherever you are. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I know you've got a lot to share with us today. The Glenview, Illinois crew just did big thumbs up and clapping when you said that, so that's very exciting. And take us away, dive in literally and figuratively, and let's get to it, Christina.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'm a marine biologist, and I think a lot of times when people think of marine biology, they think of swimming with dolphins, a lot of scuba diving. You mentioned sea turtle rescues, but there are so many jobs that involve marine biology work. And so I wanted to share just a few of the things that I've been able to do during my career that I think are fun and interesting. So I have done things like work with sharks. I do a lot of fish surveys, jellies work, and some marine mammals too. But the projects I'm going to talk about today are all over the place. The first one is called the Gulf Stream Orphan Project. And this is on the eastern coast of the US, the Atlantic Ocean. And it's a group of ocean scientists and citizens and people who like to fish who noticed that there were some oddballs that shouldn't be there, some fish that didn't belong. And what they found out was that these fish were coming from the Caribbean. They were coming all the way from the Bahamas, and they would get stuck on what's called the Gulf Stream. So it's a really strong, powerful current that runs up the eastern seaboard of the United States and up into Canada. And these little tiny fish, sometimes just as eggs, would get caught in that Gulf Stream, and they would ride it all the way up in a huge journey, kind of reminiscent of Finding Nemo, way up, and then they would get stuck. And then winter would come, and they can't live through the winter because they're tropical fish, they're Caribbean fish. And so, as you can see, this is some of the fish that live in New England. There are things like mullet and hake and porgies and sea bream. And if you look at them, they all look the same, right? They're kind of silver, they're kind of plain, and they fit in really nicely there in the rocky coastline. And the fish that we were seeing, that we discovered, look like this. They're all gorgeous, beautiful, brightly colored. They typically live in corals, and they fit in well in their environment, but they don't fit in so well in the New England coastline. And so what did we do? And why do we do this? Why do we want to know about these fish? Well, one of the reasons is climate change. So how are these fish ending up here, and why? And can we track them from year to year? And what kind of data can we have? But the other thing we did is, because we all work in aquariums, we wanted to collect these fish and give them a life. So because of that winter that they can't live through, those cold temperatures, if we collect them and we put them in the aquarium, then they can live long lives and be ambassadors and teach the world about tropical Caribbean fishes. So every year in, say, September, October, we go and we collect as many of them as we can find. And like I said, they're pretty easy to find because they're so bright. And then we put them on exhibit, and they're all over US and Canadian, and even some international world aquariums. Next, I want to talk about cephalopods. So the majority of my research was with cephalopods, and cephalopods is a fancy family name for squids and octopuses and cuttlefish and nautilus. Nautilus are the only cephalopods that have shells. They're up there in the upper right-hand corner. Cephalopods, I think, are the coolest of all the marine creatures. They have very, very strange behaviors and cool bodily things that no other animal on Earth has. So some of the cool things, octopuses, they have up to 2,000 suckers, and each one of those suckers can move independently. So think if you're moving your fingers, but you had 2,000 of them, and they could all have a mind of their own. They also have blue blood. They have blue blood. You know that we have red blood because ours is iron-based, but they have copper-based blood, which is like no other animal on Earth. One of the reasons that they're so tolerant to the cold temperatures in the ocean. You sort of seen again from referencing back to Finding Nemo or Finding Dory, Hank, you could see they made it very exaggerated that he could turn into a fire extinguisher or a telephone. But octopuses really do have the ability to change not just their color and their patterns, but they can also make their skin texture bumpy or smooth or crinkled. So they can do all of those things and they don't even think about it. It's instantaneous, just like you and I breathing or blinking. So they can do that. They also have no skeletons. They're invertebrates. They're related to things like snails and slugs. But they can create a skeleton. They can suck a ton of water into their body cavity, and that kind of water under pressure inside them can create what feels like bones. So that's why it looks like they can stand up, and you can see them. Sometimes they're very wiggly and squirmy, but other times they look like they're human skeletons. So they can do that just with water. And that same water, when they shoot it out of their body, has the same speed as a jet. It can propel them through the water just like a jet. So working with cephalopods is really interesting because they're also incredibly intelligent. Here is an example. You can take a cephalopod, you can take an octopus and put them in a jar, and they can figure out how to escape. So they're very big escape artists, which means when you're creating places for them to live outside of the ocean, you have to be really smart and you have to engineer things that keep them safe because they will crawl out not realizing that there isn't water on the other side. So working with cephalopods is a lot of engineering. What we did is we grew our own cephalopods. Rather than taking things out of the ocean, a lot of places in aquariums and research facilities, they do what's called aquaculture, meaning they take the eggs and they raise either fish or, in our case, octopuses and cuttlefish. And then they're put on display and we don't have to take any more from the wild. It's complicated. So all the different cephalopods have different eggs, and you have to know which ones you're looking for. So in the upper right there, those are actually squid eggs, the big, long, puffy bean-looking ones. Some of them, like cuttlefish, lay one individual egg, and it's just a big round ball, transparent. You can see through it, and you can see the babies inside. Surprisingly, the bottom right picture, those are octopus eggs, and they are like grains of rice. And you think the octopuses are the biggest creatures, so they would have the big eggs, but they don't. They have teeny tiny eggs, and they lay thousands and thousands of them. And then nautilus are the strangest ones of all. Those are the bottom left, and they look like rocks. In fact, no one has ever seen one in the wild. They only knew because the ones that we had in captivity laid these eggs, and we were like, what are those in the exhibits? And then all of a sudden it was the baby nautilus is hatched, and we were like, that's what they look like. So here is what it looks like when an octopus hatches. These are at our marine biological laboratory in New England, and there they are popping out, and then they immediately become colorful and their chromatophores work, and they start to camouflage as soon as they are hatched. So taking care of the hatchlings, again, all of the eggs are different, but all of the babies also need different things. So habitat, where they live. Do they like to swim open in the ocean? Do they need something to hold on to? Lighting. Some cephalopods don't like any light at all. Others, if they're from tropical waters, like places near the equator, they need bright, bright sunlight. And then some like to just sit patiently and wait to grow up, and others want to be in a big current. And in the wild, they would just ride along until they're big enough to swim against it and then decide where they want to go. And then there are some that need to have buddies to be healthy, and others don't like buddies and they'll eat their buddies. So we have to figure out all those things. What makes a baby cephalopod happy? And then once we know that, then we have to start creating things. You can't just go to the store and buy a cephalopod nursery crib. So we create all of these different systems. And like I said, marine biology is a lot of different skills and a lot of different experiences that you have to put together. So engineering is definitely one of them. And then as they grow out, their needs change. So you can see we have tanks for adults, we have tanks for hatchlings. The ones on the bottom right have rocks on the top, and those are obviously for those octopuses. Like I said, they can escape so easily, so you have to do things to keep them safe. And in the top right, that's for cuttlefish eggs, because cuttlefish eggs like to just, once they're laid, the moms leave them and they just float in the ocean. So we had to use soda bottles, which we connected to water flow, to keep them suspended. So it was mimicking as if they were floating along in the ocean. And then you have to figure out what they want to eat. And cephalopods are picky eaters. They're like 3-year-old toddlers all the time. They typically will only eat food that if they can see that it's moving, meaning we can't just go and buy fish sticks and give them a frozen chunk of something. They need to have live foods, and live foods need to be taken care of too to keep them alive. And so they'll eat anything from plankton to shrimp. Once in a while, we can we can buy frozen brine shrimp, like the sea monkeys that you see in the toy store, and they'll eat those brine shrimp. But you have to kind of play with it and make it move in the water and make it seem like it's alive. So like flying the airplane into a toddler's mouth. So these are all of the cephalopods that we grew in the aquarium, many different varieties, many different needs and different habitats that they come from and geographies in the world. So also all beautiful. Then the next thing I did was exploration. So I did deep sea exploration. I live in California. I live in Monterey, California. And so we have one of the deepest underwater marine canyons. It goes down many miles under the surface of the ocean. And worldwide, only about 20% of the ocean's floor has been explored, and we know about it. So there's still a lot of exploration to go. And how we do that is we do it aboard these very, very fancy technological vessels. So this was one of the ships that I worked on. It's called the RV Western Flyer, and it has an ROV, a remote operated underwater vehicle that we would deploy, and it would go with big cameras and lights and just start, we would sink it all the way to the bottom of the ocean. It takes about an hour to drop it all the way down that far. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is when we bring it back up. There's a giant magnet that sticks onto it and lifts it back up into the middle of the ship. And then the moon door is shut. And it's a beautiful thing. That particular ROV is called the Dock Ricketts. Then the other ship that I worked on is called the Rachel Carlson, the RV Rachel Carlson. And this one has the ROV Ventana. And this one goes over the side of the ship. So you can see that there's that giant crane there and all of the deckhands. And they have basically the lines that hold it to the ship so that you can bring it back so you don't lose the ROV, because that would be tragic. So this is what it looks like. And you can see we were in some pretty good swelly seas there and keeping your feet up, and there it goes, and then it's going to descend to the bottom of the ocean. Now, on board the ship, safety first. So a lot of people think when you fall in the ocean that you're going to either get eaten by a shark or you might drown, but very likely, especially here in Monterey, where the water temperature is somewhere around 48 degrees Fahrenheit, you're probably going to suffer from hypothermia. So the first thing we have to do when we get on board the ship is put on our safety suit and make sure that we know what to do in case of an emergency. Then on the ship, we have, just like you have on land, we have these labs, we have laboratories. For those of you who have fish tanks at home, you know that you have to have a bunch of equipment like lights and filters and water flow and things like that. Well, when we went to go collect all of these very, very deep sea creatures, we needed to have very specialized equipment to keep them alive. And unlike the fish that you have in your fish tank that want lots of light, these live so far deep in the ocean that there is no light. So we had to do things to take away light to make sure that the water was very, very cold. So we brought with basically giant freezers, and we had lots of like water movement things. We also, there on the right, that is the ROV Dock Ricketts. And when you get ready to put it in the water, you have to put in all of the tubes that you use to collect all of the animals. So you can see me setting up all of the tubes so that when we collected our jellyfish and our fish and our corals and things like that, we had spaces to keep them on the ROV to bring them back up to the surface. And this is what it looks like in the control room of the ship. So we're monitoring all of the different things. We need to make sure that the ROV isn't going to run into anything and get tangled so that it doesn't come back up. We're looking at things like water temperature and the speed of the water flow, the depth of the ROV, how deep it's going, where it's at. You can see it shows where the underwater mountains are and all of the different structure down there, like rocks and peaks and vents and things like that. And then, of course, once you get to the bottom, you can see all of the animals. And these are some of the things that we would see. Obviously, no one has ever seen them with the naked eye. You can't dive down there. It's too deep. You would get crushed by the pressure. So the only way to see it is with this very, very fancy ROV with its cameras and lights. And so some of the things we would see up in the top corner there's a snailfish riding on a crab. We came across what's known as an octopus garden. So these are all the mother octopuses who are watching over their babies. Octopuses stay with their eggs, unlike cuttlefish who let them drift. So all of these octopus moms had laid eggs all over these rocks, and where they are is called a hydrothermic vent. So that means hot water is kind of seeping out of the rocks there, and it keeps their eggs warmer. And so they all kind of congregate there to give their babies the best possible chance of hatching. So lots and lots of octopuses in the octopus garden. A giant jelly. That jellyfish is about the size of my head. And then the bottom right, I think, is the coolest creature, maybe possibly on Earth. This is called a barrel eye fish. And what you're looking at, it looks almost like it's a fake, like an AI image, but its head is transparent. So what you're looking at, those green blobs, those are its actual brain and eye organs and things, and you can see right through this fish, and it is very cool. It's only been sighted 6 times, and one of them that I was one of the dives that I was on. So very cool fish. And then this is called the bloodcomb jelly. It had never been collected or displayed, and so we were able to bring this beautiful thing to the surface and put it in a display tank at the aquarium, and it's just gorgeous. And then this is one of the stars that I discovered. This is called a Brisingid star, or a fire star. And just like the cephalopod equipment, you can't go to Target and say, I need something that will scoop up a star at the bottom of the ocean. And so if you look at that really closely, that is a spatula. So sometimes you just make do and you create the tools you need when they don't exist. And so we kind of cut off the handle of the spatula and we welded it onto the robotic arm of the ROV. And then, as you can see in the bottom picture, there's a drawer that kind of slides out just like your sock drawer at home. There's a drawer that slides out of the bottom of the ROV, and we scoop up the star with our homemade spatula device and our robotic arm, and then we put it in and the drawer closes and then it returns to the surface. And again, we were able to put these on display. No one had seen them before, so very cool for visitors of the aquarium. And some other things that have been collected and put on display: viperfish, deep sea isopods. The crab there, that is actually a real whale skull. And so you can see how big that is. It probably has, I'm just over 5 feet. So that is about 10 feet. The size of that crab is about 10 feet. So it's about 2 of me long. It's called a Japanese giant spider crab. And then down in the other corner is a little sea pig. It's a invertebrate that just eats mud and moves the mud through it. And you can see the mud right there in its belly. And then finally, I want to tell you about a conservation project that I am lucky enough to work on, and it's called Reshark. And it's an effort to recover sharks that are endangered and threatened in the world. So in a place in Indonesia called Raja Ampat, for a long time, fishermen were allowed to use dynamite to kill the fish. And so they just are out on their canoes and they throw a piece of dynamite over the side. It explodes. It kills everything. They dive down and they get the fish to eat and feed their families. But in doing so, it kills everything. And so all of the coral there died. But the government decided, they realized after some research that it was a bad idea to let people dynamite fish. So they changed the laws and they made dynamite fishing illegal. And the reefs returned. They all recovered with some help, and they look beautiful. I've been diving there. They look like this now. But unfortunately, in the time when they were not healthy, the sharks didn't have a place to eat or feed or to breed their babies. And so these sharks on the bottom here, that's a leopard shark. And the leopard sharks, even though the reefs recovered, they never did recover. So a group got together and decided to help them out. And so leopard sharks are very popular in aquariums worldwide. They're easy to keep. They live long, healthy lives, and they're very comfortable. So they lay lots and lots of eggs. And usually, because the aquariums don't need any more baby sharks, they let the eggs not hatch. But these people started asking the aquariums, will you send us your eggs? Will you send us your leopard shark eggs? And so they can look through them with flashlights and see if there are healthy babies inside. And if there are, they get shipped to this nursery in Raja Ampat. So they built a sea pen in the ocean just off the shore, and they take the eggs and they hatch the babies. And they did a study that found out if they released just 500 baby sharks, it would be enough to recover the entire population and make a healthy population. The board on the side there, I just put there because they named one of their sharks after me. So baby Christina shark was born on February 16th, 2024. So this is a hatchling. This is a baby hatchling, and they have vets who come in. This vet is from Singapore, and he comes in and he makes sure that they're healthy. And then they put a little tiny tracker inside so that once they release the sharks back into the wild, they can know if they're doing okay. And here is me feeding my namesake baby shark, Christina, when I went to visit them in Raja Ampat. So these are in the sea pen, and they learn how to forage for their food. And once they're big and strong and ready to go, and they feel like they won't be attacked by any predators, then they invite the entire village and communities around the nursery, and they release the sharks. And here is Christina going out to sea. This was in August of last year of 2024. So she was about 5-6 months old when she went back. And I talked to someone just a few days ago, and she is pinging. Her transponder is pinging around the island, and they know she is still out there growing healthy. And hopefully she, in turn, will have babies, and then soon there will be a healthy shark population there in Raja Ampat. So those are my favorite projects, and I'll throw it back to Jesse and see what kind of questions you have.
Oh, thank you so much, Christina. If you want to come out of screen share, please do. Some of my very favorite things in ocean science were in that broadcast. I love nautilus. I have a nautilus shell that I got when I was a very little kid. They're one of the most beautiful animals on planet Earth. When I used to work at the aquarium in Toronto, we had shark eggs. You could see the shine of light through them and see the babies moving around. One of the most amazing things in all of nature. And highlighting reshark is super cool. So I'm going to put this in the chat for everyone. But we actually did one of our daily dive featurettes all on reshark, where they feature a lot more deep dive on that story. So can't encourage you to check it out enough. There's lots to explore and discover there. Now, let's dive in with Q&A. If you're on YouTube and you want to share questions in the chat, we've got loads of time for this. Our amazing Glenview crew, we're going to head to you in just a minute. Christina, I'll start with a question while we give our kids time to put their thinking caps on. Recently, you had the chance to go to the Galápagos as well, and I'd love you to talk just a little bit about what you did there and some of the cool cutting-edge science you were up to.
Absolutely. So the purpose of the Galápagos trip, one of the other projects that I work on is called the Lost Species Project. And it looks for things that haven't been seen in the wild in a very long time. So if scientists have not put their eyes on something specific, in this case, it was a coral. There was a coral that hadn't been seen since 1982 when I was just a little girl. And there was a heat wave event there. And so the coral had not been seen. And after 40 or so years, we were very worried what was going on with this coral. So we had an expedition there, and we had some divers. We had some really unique divers. Normally, when I dive, I only dive to about 20 meters. So 60 feet is about the limit that I can go to. But there are divers who have special equipment that allow them to go much deeper. They're called mesophotic divers, and they go down to 75 meters or 225 feet. And so we were lucky enough to have them with us, and they went in and they found the coral in a place we weren't expecting it. So it was very, very deep, much deeper than we were expecting.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just, that's so cool. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. So it was found really deep, and we think that's because it needed colder water. So in the ocean, obviously the top water that has sunlight is much warmer, and then as you start to go down, it gets colder and colder. So we think that after the heat wave, this particular coral decided it needed to live in colder, deeper water, and so it settled. Corals are animals. They start out and they're free floating, but at some point they decide that they need to settle, and then they become those sort of rocky looking structures that you see. So this coral settled much deeper than we were expecting, which is why we couldn't find it, because we weren't looking for it in that place. But we did find it, and we're really happy to know that it still exists on this planet and it did not go extinct.
We've actually done a bevy of programs on deep water coral. It's super cool. It's something we're just starting to really dive into as an organization. So thank you for the explanation, and maybe we'll have to do a program specifically on it in the future.
Yeah.
All right. We got a bevy of questions coming in on YouTube. That's awesome. We're going to head to Glenview for our first one with our lunchtime crew. Hello, kids, and welcome in. Take us away live. Hey.
So have you ever connected with a certain animal or anything?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So octopuses, like I said, they're really, really smart. And when you take care of one, unfortunately they don't live that long, but for 2 or 3 years straight, when you take care of an octopus, it's sort of, you get to know each other. They can taste their suckers have tasters like your tongue. So they can taste that. They could tell when I was in a bad mood or if I was super happy. And they each had their own personalities. Some of them were extremely inquisitive. I had some that would take apart the plumbing. They would unscrew the filters and things in their tanks, and I had to constantly be repairing it. And yeah, so you get to know the octopuses really well. The giant Pacific octopus was definitely my favorite.
Pretty special animal. When I used to work at Ripley's Aquarium in Toronto, they had one in the back, and the aquarist really, really knew it. And it would like certain people, dislike certain people, had a real personality, every bit like a dog or cat would. Like it's a very, very intelligent animal. And I'd encourage our classes. My Octopus Teacher, amazing film, all on someone's connection with an octopus. So if you're keen to explore that a little more, that is a great piece of work. All right, so many coming in on YouTube. We're going to dive in with a whole bunch from them, and then we're going to go back to our Glenview class. Kitchener, Miss St. John's class, they want to know, what education do you have? If someone wants to become you and they want to become a marine biologist, what was your path and what would you recommend?
So I did go to college and I studied marine biology at University of California, Santa Cruz. I think there are other degrees that even to do what I do, I see a lot of people who study environmental science, they'll study conservation science, ecology, I think is a popular one. It depends. Some people want to study just one animal. And if you do that, marine biology, and you tend to focus on one species, lots of people now, because there are so many problems in the world and so many, habitats that are being destroyed and things like that, ecology and environmental science are good things that allow you to work in differing environments. And so, yeah, even though I am a marine biologist, I have also done work, like I worked in the forest of Madagascar, also with this lost species program, looking for things that hadn't been documented. So, yeah, I think there's a bunch of different degrees. If you want to do engineering, like some of the ROV pilots and things like that, they just have straight engineering degrees. And yeah, communications, I think a lot of what people do now to talk about the stories that they're telling, like I work with our communications teams so that I can tell them what we've done and they can tell the world about it. So there are a lot of different things to do exactly what I did marine biology, but to work in marine biology, you can have almost any degree.
I love that we highlight this, because when we have research vessels out in the deep sea, there are so many different roles that people have on ships like that. So like there are cooks, there are lawyers, there are photographers, there's captains. Like if you want to be involved in a life in or on the water, you can approach it in a variety of ways. If you want to become a marine biologist, a lot of what you highlighted is great. And I will recommend for our younger kids, books like this that I still have today are spectacular. There's an ocean version of this that Smithsonian puts out every year, and like some really, really cool stuff if you want to just explore the world of amazing species, jobs, habitats, all sorts of cool things. Can't encourage those enough. Reading is a great conduit to all sorts of great learning. So thanks for the question, guys.
I agree. I have my bookshelf here. I have my shark book.
Everywhere.
I have my shark book.
I will say genuinely,
5.
like marine biologists, engineers, explorers, everyone we've ever had on this broadcast reads a lot. Like the more you read, the more you explore different things in the world, the more likely you are to end up with an amazing job like Christina. So it's a great question. Thanks, guys. All right, Calgary, welcome in Mr. Bedard's class. They've got a big question. So again, what has guided you throughout your career, and what would you recommend to students to how they would learn to trust their voice in science? So what's guided you, and how would we guide others?
I think you have to have an open mind. I know that I went into ocean science because I went to SeaWorld as a child, and I saw dolphins, and I thought I really was interested in dolphin and whale communication. I thought I was going to go down a path where I studied with hydrophones and things like that. But my first internship was with fishes and seahorses specifically. And I just thought, well, I have to do this to get to the next step of where I'm going. But it turns out I absolutely fell in love with fishes. And so I kind of turned and I started looking at that aspect. And then when we were getting some fishes into the aquarium, one of the the collectors who was sending us this, they also sent some cephalopod eggs. They sent some cuttlefish eggs. And none of us knew what to do with them. So I just did a quick deep dive. Oh my gosh, how do you take care of cuttlefish eggs? How can we get these to hatch? And started, working to create a cephalopod aquaculture program. So I think you always have to, I think curiosity, of course, is your first thing. You have to be really curious about the natural world. You have to love sort of all animals, and be willing to try anything. Some of the work is dirty, it's hard, it's heavy. It's not all interesting. Some of it is just scrubbing tanks all day and getting rid of algae so that everybody's healthy and things like that. So I think you have to be willing to do the icky jobs along with the fun jobs, but you also have to keep an open mind and say, hey, if this opportunity comes up, don't turn it down. In fact, I had a student contact me just yesterday and she's like, hey, somebody offered me this. Should I do it? And I said, yes. The answer is always yes. Do it, because that's how you find out what else is new and interesting to you.
What a beautiful answer. Thanks, Christina. Geez, that was awesome. And maybe you can end up like you, where people are handing you cuttlefish eggs, and among other things. That's a curveball life can throw you that you may not have known before this broadcast, everybody. We're going to head back to Glenview for another live one. YouTubers, please keep sharing in the chat. Come on up in Illinois and take us away. Hey, guys.
How many leopard sharks have you let out into the wild?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good question. So they just released a new batch, and I think as of right now, it's somewhere in the range of 55 to 60. Early on, they've definitely, it's gone up. So in the beginning, when they were trying to figure things out, and things like shipping eggs around the world, it's really hard because you know how it is. Mail takes a long time. And so they were having trouble getting the eggs out to the nursery to get them there. They have to keep them alive in the bags and things like that. And so in the beginning, they were shipping just 1 or 2 eggs at a time. This past year, they've had shipments of like 25. I think they have at least a couple dozen babies in the nursery right now. So I think we're up to 55, and they're all pinging. They're all like, we know they're out there and they're doing well. In fact, it's now gotten to the point where some of the tourist divers have reported and taken pictures. They've seen the babies. So they're starting to show up just visually for people, which is really amazing too.
It's really nice to see. So earlier in the turtle program, we talked about green sea turtles coming off the endangered species. Like they're least concerned now. They've gotten a lot better because of the work the conservationists have done. To see this tangibly with the sharks too is so special. It underscores that like when we leave wildlife space and we let committed people do their work sort of unhindered by people trying to exploit those animals come back. Like any kind of animal on this planet, if we give it that space, comes back in droves. It's really important for all you as classes to remember this. And so what a great question, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, one of the things, Jesse, is when nature always wins.
Yep.
That's been my phrase forever. Nature always wins if you let it.
Yeah, rock on. The essence of our whole organization at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, I think. Setna has a great question. So I'm going to put this up on screen too. If you had to choose another career other than the one you were in, what would it be and why?
Okay, that's a good question, because I do think about that. So right now, one of the tools that we use a lot, and Jesse knows about this, is environmental DNA. So all animals, all people, you know, we shed our hair and our fingernails and our skin, and you know, we poop and we breathe and all of those things. And so when animals do that in the wild, they release their cells, and so we can collect those cells and we can analyze them, and we can figure out, just from, say, a bottle of water. I can collect a bottle of water in the ocean, and I can say, oh, these 10 different fishes and these 2 different corals and these marine mammals, I can tell you what's in the ocean just from a bottle of water. And so I've been doing a lot of work in that space. And I'm lucky enough that I can work with people who know how to do the actual analysis and the lab work and all of that. But I really love molecular science. And so I guess if I had to go back and do it again, I love what I do, but I would also think about molecular science.
So I'm going to highlight this for our younger kids in a way that's kind of gross, but kind of fun. So if you walk in a room and there's no people, you're like, oh, there's no people in the room. But there's lots of evidence of people. And one of the biggest versions of this is dust. Most dust in your house, in your classroom, is human skin cells. Like, you're constantly shedding skin cells all the time, which sounds really gross, but is really true. And so any scientist with eDNA technology could go and scoop up the dust and say people were here because their DNA is in that room. And so that's true of pretty much everywhere. And there's been so many scientists that have come on this year and talked to us about eDNA. And it's this golden, super cool, cutting edge, amazing science for understanding the world around us. I love it. We're going to be hearing so much more about this in the years to come. And so you may have to come on and do a whole program just on eDNA, because it totally rocks.
I would love to. I'm obsessed. I think it is such an, like you said, such an amazing tool. Yeah. So, yep.
All right. So many great questions, man. Okay. I'm going to take one more from YouTube, go back to our live class, and then we'll wrap up with some really good ones in the chat. Okay. Let's see. What do coral reefs need to eat to stay alive? Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Good question. So, like I said, corals, when they're babies, they float around, but then they settle and they can't move again, right? They're where they are. So they depend on their food to come to them. They can't go hunting like sharks and fish and other things. So they need things that drift by. And the things that drift by are plankton. So little teeny tiny crustaceans and shrimp, almost too small to see with your eyes. Tiny little crustaceans. They drift by and they catch them. They have sticky, the coral has like little sticky bits on it, and they catch that, those floaters, those drifters.
Yep. I love sticky bits. That is your scientific term of the day, everybody. Coral, just a weird note for our classes. Coral are really closely related to jellyfish, like they're cousins, which is super weird. A jellyfish is basically an upside down coral that floats and swims away. And a coral is one that's upside down and sticks to the rock. So like really cool creatures. Can't express enough. Like, we love coral reefs here. And very few people ever ask about what and how they eat. So thank you for that. Awesome question. Glenview, we're heading to you guys, and then we're going to wrap up with a really great question online. Come on in. And I will note, too, for all our classes, sorry, if you have extra questions we can't get to in the broadcast, but it seems like you do, which is the best problem to have, email them to me. I'll pass them to Christina, and we'll try and get you as many extra answers as we can before the holidays kick in. But for now, going live, come on
Jesse
in.
And Christina, I'm going to stick you with 2 quick ones.
Yes, let's do it.
Go for it.
Cool. Number 1.
How many places have you dived?
Yeah, and what's our second one? Do you have our second question? Yeah. Oh, hey.
So, like, how long do you think it'll take for all of the for the baby sharks to like repopulate until it's like normal?
Yeah. Sweet, great questions, guys. Yep. Okay, quick one
great
first.
Questions.
Yep.
Okay, how many places have I been diving? I have been diving on every continent except for Antarctica. And next year, I believe I am going to Antarctica. I saw some of my diving friends who are in the Galápagos who are diving there right now, and it is freezing cold, but it looks fascinating. So I have been diving in every ocean, again, except for Antarctic Sea. And I have done, I stopped, most divers count for a while, and then if you do a lot of them, so I stopped counting at about 5,000 dives. So my favorite place to be is under the water, definitely. And then the shark. Okay, so the reef shark, the amount of time. So they, like I said, they calculated that they would need to release 500 sharks. Now, it takes a while for those sharks to become old enough to have their own babies. So we have to make it through their entire childhood and teenage years to get to the point where they can have their own babies. So the cycle is it's pretty far in the future. It's probably beyond 30 years before they're starting to really expand that population. But the more we can get, the sooner we can get more into the water and getting into that growth cycle, the sooner they'll be able to have their own babies and continue that. And probably by 50 years, they're saying it could be a restored reef.
Very cool. Well, fingers crossed, and maybe even faster if we do really, really good stuff and we keep investing in great things like reef sharks. So, guys, really briefly, I'm going to sneak in a question, and it's a very tough question, but we haven't had it yet, and that's shocking. Of your 5,000 plus dives on 6 continents, do you have a favorite place to dive?
Yes. Where the Reef Shark Project is, Raja Ampat. It's called the Coral Triangle, and it is very possibly, it's called the most diverse place in the world. So it has the most number of species, and it was just an absolute dream. And so it's very difficult to get to, but it was worth it. And I do hope to get back there. Raja Ampat.
I want to note, so we've had a lot of scuba divers on this program that have done many thousands of dives, and there's 2 consistent places they say are their favorite place to dive. One is the Coral Triangle, like off of Indonesia's coast, and the other is like British Columbia, California kelp forest, like on the western coast of North America. So those are the 2 places that really consistently the most elite divers in the world regularly highlight, which is really, really cool. So if you ever get a chance in your life, you can start on the path to scuba diving at 8 years old with something called Bubble Maker by Patty. Can't recommend it enough. It opens up 70% of the world to you in a way that simply is not possible if you do not have that skill. So thank you.
And I grew up in the Midwest where we were not on an ocean, and I was certified at 12 years old. I was certified at my local YWCA and a rock quarry. And and then I went to sea camp and did my first ocean dive. So you can do it anywhere you are. It doesn't have to, you don't have to live on the ocean.
I was certified at 23 in a quarry in Ontario, so I completely understand.
Yep.
A really big question. We get this of a lot of divers. I have a very firm opinion on this. We have had the full gamut of opinions on this question from experts all around the world. So Mr. Bedard's class wants to know, or Marcella particularly, are aquariums harmful? What would you say?
So aquariums, particularly in the US and in Canada, and then increasingly globally, are accredited by organizations that have done incredible amounts of research. Yep, AZA and WAZA and CZA. And so they've done incredible amounts of research into what creates a healthy, enriching environment for species to thrive. And so if you go to an aquarium, make sure it's accredited, make sure that it's been analyzed and that it's doing a good job. But from there, I also am a firm believer that aquariums are places that inspire people. And a lot of the research that's done, we couldn't save the sharks, right? We couldn't go into the wild and try to help repopulate those sharks if we didn't have the technologies that were developed within aquariums. And so if we didn't have the zebra sharks in populations where they were laying eggs, and we know they're comfortable because they're laying eggs.
Yep.
So if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to save the things in the rest of the world. So I think aquariums are top-notch research institutions. I think they inspire the public. It's how I ended up on my career path. So I'm a fan.
I couldn't agree more. So you exactly echoed my sentiments about this, but I'm really glad we mentioned accreditation. So I grew up in Ontario and Toronto, and Toronto has the Toronto Zoo, which is like one of the most iconic, amazing zoos in the world. And then after that, they got Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. Both of these places are accredited, which means they're the highest standards of animal care. The people who work there live and breathe making sure the animals are happy and healthy. So there's those. And then there's also tons of roadside zoos. Oh, we've got a tiger in a cage that's the size of this room. And those places are bad. Animals should not be in those sorts of conditions, and those places are not accredited. They're not with people that are having the animal's best interest at heart. So it's really important wherever you go in the world, look for things like AZA in the United States, CAZA in Canada. And it means that like really serious people, top scientists, top animal care people have gone in and said, yep, you're doing a great job. We think that you're doing valuable work, and go from there. And so most of the big zoos and aquariums in cities you're going to find are like that. But if you go to other countries too, one of the big things our conservation partners tell us all the time is that as kids, one of the easiest things you can do is not share pictures of animals on people. So if you see someone holding a sloth, That's not good. The sloth does not want to be held. The sloth should not be held. That's true of pretty much every wild animal you can see. Animal places like the Toronto Zoo, Ripley's Aquarium, Scripps Aquarium will not have people interacting with animals in a holding way. Sometimes they'll have a touch tank, but the animals will be able to leave in the touch tank. They don't need to be touched by people. Those are really, really important caveats to all this. But I love that that's your message. And like you and me, like we were totally inspired by zoos and aquariums as children, and it helped inspire our whole career. So what a great question, Mr. Bedard's class. And we really, really appreciate it. Christina, time flies and you're having fun. We are nearing the end of the broadcast. Before we wrap up and bring in our class to say a big thank you and farewell, is there any last message you want to leave us with about the amazing work that you do?
Well, it's more important than ever. Obviously, we hear a lot about all these lovely stories of reshark and things like that, but the fact that we need reshark means that there's problems that we need to solve. But I think there's so many brilliant people and so many up and coming students like yourselves who find this work amazing, and you have big hearts and you care and you want the world to be a healthy, great place for all the living things. And so I say jump into it. If it's something that you think you want to pursue, like Jesse said, read everything you can, watch everything you can, and find people like me, because I would love to answer your questions, and find someone who's doing the work and follow them, because they want you to come do what they do. So yeah.
No better message than that. Thank you so much for joining us for the first time of hopefully many, Christina. We'd love to have you back. And as we do to wrap up every broadcast, we're going to bring in our classes to say a big thank you and farewell. So our Avoca West class, we're going to bring you guys in. If you're on YouTube and you want to scream and yell and annoy the principal, you have our permission, so please do. But welcome in, and Glenn, thank you so much, everybody.